I have to say I really respect the amount of research and realism you throw into a lot of your writing, but I guess the first part of the question is how much of you ever at any times take any, I guess, any creative tangents or theories that you want to incorporate of your own into any of your books?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of that? The Spectre of Death was handing me something.
I was just saying, even with all the research that you put into a lot of your books, are there any times that you want to say, well, I have a theory about this and I want to incorporate it, or I want to take like a creative liberty with this and put my own spin on it that you write into?
Well, to a degree you have to, because even though I was able to get the medicine, the science to give me a fairly strong scientific structure for the zombie things, there's a point at which we have to step into, okay, well, prion disease will not actually do this. And that's why I hooked it to the unnamed parasites that create the aggressive behavior and so on. Luckily, science can't do this at the moment. So there are some creative liberties, but even with the creative liberties, I like staying within the bounds of possible. When I ran these ideas, I mean, a lot of this stuff came from the research I was doing with people for Zombie CSU. We're talking world-class epidemiologists and scientists in various fields. And when I ran the scenarios by them, a lot of times they were saying, well, it isn't so much whether it's impossible, it's more like when will it be possible, which is creepy. And in fact, a lot of what goes on, a lot of the genetics in Dragon Factory, these guys were giving me time spans. That'll be possible in 5 years, that'll be possible in 10 years. I take license to allow it to happen closer to our current time, but most of the stuff is possible or will be possible at some point in the foreseeable path of scientific development. And that's why I find the books frightening to write, because a writer writes the sort of book they want to read. This is the kind of book that I wanted to read, and I'm scaring myself with it. Because actually, there's one little side note here. There was a different book plan for book 3. I had come up with an idea for a really good terrorist attack on the United States, and it's really, really good, and it's so good it will work. So I was advised not to do it. I do plan at some point to write a book called Unstoppable about a writer who creates an unstoppable plot and then is being chased by the terrorists who actually want to know what that plot is. That will probably be a Joe Ledger spin-off if things go well. But yeah, that's one of the weird parts about being a writer is you can actually come up with some really, really bad stuff.
I guess on the second part of that, are there any times in which I suppose maybe a fan or somebody you knew suggested something that really scared you and you wanted to incorporate that into the book?
Not yet.
Not yet?
But I'm open to it.
So the great way you get around the concept of, oh, that's so good you shouldn't write it, is to write a book about writing the book about it.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Because you never actually have to explain what it is.
Right. It's the suitcase in Pulp Fiction, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Right there, yes.
I was just wondering, going actually backwards, do you have any plans to do anything about the Ghost Road Blues trilogy?
Yes, I do. For those who haven't read the Ghost Road Blues trilogy, it's a series of 3 novels set in rural Pennsylvania: Ghost Road Blues, Dead Man's Song, and Bad Moon Rising. I have a sequel planned, but not yet pitched, and I have 2 prequels planned, but not yet pitched. I need to come up for air at the moment to be able to pitch them, but the sequel will follow Mike Sweeney as an older teenager in high school. Working title Black Marsh High. The prequels, one called Hellhounds on My Trail, is the story of the Bone Man from childhood in Mississippi through the blues community and the blues, a lot of the superstitions and legends dealing with the blues up until he gets to Pine Deep. And I also have one that I probably will pitch first about a character named Big Mick Sweeney, who's Mike Sweeney's grandfather. Comes back, he just gets out of the Airborne Rangers at the end of World War II and goes home to Pine Deep and finds out that the war has intruded into Pine Deep. And that one I have a first draft on. I just need to get the time to pitch it. But I do plan to continue to return to that series. I doubt it'll be with Pinnacle Books, the publishers who currently have it. Most likely we'll pitch that to St. Martin's or some similar company.
So before we, since we veered away from Patient Zero for a second, I think we should take a moment to, I know you have your comics up here. If you'd like to say something about what you're doing there in that arena.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing a bunch of different things. I started writing for Marvel Comics recently. I'm the regular writer for Black Panther comic, which up until recently was a male character, and Marvel got a lot of heat for having that male character injured by Doctor Doom and his sister taking the role of the Black Panther. And I took the comic over with issue 7, and I've turned it into a political comic. And there's a lot of action in it, and we're working on making the character an A-list character, and the character never was before an A-list character. Doctor Doom and Namor, the Submariner, are big characters in it. Fantastic Four with regulars in it, and we have a bunch of new villains as well. And I'll be doing things that will upset a lot of fans until they read the end of the arc, and then they'll get really pissed off at me, and then I'll have to read the next arc, which hopefully will make them like me again. But it's all about taking risks. I'm also one of the 4 writers involved in Marvel Zombies Return. The first issue just came out. Fred Van Lent wrote. David Wellington, who wrote Monster Island, Monster Planet, is doing 2nd issue. I'm doing the 3rd issue, which is Wolverine and Spider-Man, which will be out the 17th of this month. 4th will be by Seth Grahame-Smith, who did Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And then Fred Van Lent will come and do issue 5. And one's coming out each week, and they'll be collecting it as a hardcover or a trade paperback. They're doing both versions in January. I also did a Punisher Naked Kill for the Marvel Max line, very adult stuff. Wolverine, I'm now actually, my editor asked me to pitch a Deadpool Black Panther crossover, which will be a comedy comic. If you ever read the Deadpool character, he's insane. He has 2 inner voices that he talks with, one of whom is like a drinking buddy, and he's fallen in love with the new Black Panther and getting into trouble. It's calling it Panther Envy. And I'm also doing Punisher Last Gun on Earth, which is my take on the apocalypse with the Punisher. A plague sweeps the world, for the Marvel Knights line. A plague sweeps the world that turns everybody into cannibals. Human cannibals, but cannibals. And he's the only one immune, and he feels responsible for the plague for reasons you'll need to find out in the book. And has set up his own tribal lands in Central Park. And the big bad is Spider-Man and his tribe. But I get to kill almost everybody in Marvel. It's fantastic. And the closing scene of the first issue is Central Park with stakes all the way around it with the heads of all these supervillains and heroes that he's killed. It's going to be great.
Bringing shades of Richard Matheson to the Marvel Universe.
Richard Matheson, I Am Legend, my favorite all-time book. Gave me a copy when I was a teenager and told me a lot about writing. But yeah, I've never seen, I would love to actually write a script that would be faithful to I Am Legend. That would be nice.
That would be nice.
But since I can't, or I'm not able to at the moment, instead what I'm doing is Punisher Last Gun on Earth. And they're already talking sequels with Wolverine, with Deadpool, and a few other characters.
Nice one. Yes, right there.
In Patient Zero, I was sure, because I read Zombie CSU, that you were going to pick Prime Disease to be your zombie delivery system. But what made you decide to use parasites to deliver it over anything else, and did you have any other ideas for that?
Well, the prion disease was there because fatal familial insomnia, but it's too slow a disease. I need something that would amp it up. And when I talked to a couple of guys who were experts in prion disease, as much as somebody can be an expert in prion disease, they said that if it ever gets attached to something, and they said like a parasite, that's very aggressive, and there are some parasites in the insect world. There's one that attacks ants that makes the ant goes in and attack everyone, every other ant in the nest. He said there are things in the insect world that if somebody could marry that to the prion disease, it would speed up the rate of infection and the rate of aggression. And he said, but nobody would be crazy enough to do that. And I'm thinking, I can think of at least one writer who'd be crazy enough to do it.
You know just the person.
Yeah, so that's what I did. So I had that idea fairly early on, and I stuck with it. It worked. And the scientists who I discussed the plot with, who were all thanked in the acknowledgments page, all said, yeah, that's the one that's going to keep us up at night.
So basically, you're giving a bunch of scientists insomnia.
Yeah, which is my favorite thing. Creep them out.
Yes.